Hello, and welcome back to the Wild Woody podcast. This week is episode 8, I believe, and it's book club. So, I am reviewing Daughter of No Worlds by Clarissa Broadbent. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because she also wrote The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which blew up and went crazy on Book Talk. And honestly, I don't know why this series has not blown up either, because this was absolutely freaking fabulous. 5 stars. I'm obsessed with it. I'm currently reading the second one, and it's a trilogy, I believe. But first of all, this cover, absolutely stunning. At first glance, it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look closely, it's actually Tisaanah, which is the main character, but like it actually looks like her. It's kind of hard to tell just because the cover itself is dark, but yeah, it's a fabulous cover, and we're gonna get into it. I'm hoping that like the Nevernight podcast that I did, the episode, that this episode will convince you to read it, because this book, absolutely fabulous. It's stunning. It's everything I needed after reading the previous book that I read, A Fate Inked in Blood, which was not fabulous. It was just disappointing and basic and lacking in everything. This was a book of substance, of beautiful substance. Okay, so the main character, like I said, is Tisaanah, and that's who we're following. The book does open with a scene not of Tisaanah. It opens up with a scene from the previous war of the main character, or the main male character, who we're going to meet, Max and Terius, also just Max. But after that little prologue, we are following Tisaanah. Tisaanah lives in Threll, which is a country that is largely run by Threllian lords, which are basically like the mob bosses, the mafia. They buy up the land, they fight each other to the death, and they just want power. So Tisaanah, she used to live in Nizarene. I don't know how you say it, but she used to live there with her mom, and I don't know what happened to her dad or if she had any siblings, but it was taken over by Threllian lords, and so they took everyone to the mines to work as slaves. The mines are awful, and everyone who goes there typically dies within a month. Well, her mom didn't sell, but bribed the slavers, or not really bribed, more convinced the slavers that Tisaanah would be more use working in the elite lords' households rather than in the mines. So Tisaanah goes into working in the house and performing because she's part Valtane. Valtane are human beings, but they have access to magic, and so in Threll, there's not lots of Valtane. It's not necessarily uncommon, but they're definitely a minority there. And so she was sold to Esmerus, who is he's basically like the top dogs of dogs, like the Lord of Lords in this series. And so she's sold to Esmerus, and because her ability to use magic, she'll perform magical things, like she'll make butterflies or whatever out of thin air, and I don't know, entice the crowd at big parties. So we have Tisaanah, who is now living with Esmerus, and this is like 8 years after she was originally sold into slavery, and she has been working all this time to buy her freedom. Now, not everyone is able to buy their freedom. It's up to whatever lord they work for, if they're allowed to. Well, Esmerus, when she was first sold to him, 2 years into her slavery. I'm so sorry. That was so embarrassing that I just said that. 2 years into working for Esmerus, she goes up to him and is like, hey, I want to buy my freedom. And then he's like, haha, okay, you can buy it for 1,000 gold, which is like an absurd amount for her. He is thinking it's going to take her 25 years for her to make that much money. And so he's like giving her a way out, but he doesn't really think she's ever gonna buy her way out from him. So, lo and behold, she earns the money. She was secretly like collecting money. Like, she would do performances at the parties and whatnot, but people would give her coppers and gold coins, and she was keeping them a secret, hidden, and working her way towards freedom. So she actually gets the 100 like gold marks or whatever. So she goes to Esmerus and is like, hey, I want to buy my freedom. I have the money, puts it on the table. Esmerus goes into a rage because he's like, you forgot your place, that you're a slave. And she finally realizes, like, oh, he was never actually going to let me leave. And he's like, it should have taken you longer. It should have taken you 25 years to make that much money. You were whoring yourself out. And he's, he is like using her as a sex slave and whatever he wants from her. But he's a very like jealous man. He literally owns slaves. So he's not a good man. And so he is very, he doesn't want anyone to touch his property. And so he's like, you've been whoring yourself out and whatnot. He goes into this rage and starts beating her to the death. And Tisaanah, has this moment where she's like, it's basically like me or him. Like, it needs to stop. And so she ends up killing Esmerus. Now, obviously, Esmerus, like I said, Lord of Lords, he is top dog and thrilled. This is a huge deal. Luckily, her friend Cyril is his bodyguard. And so they made it kind of look like Tisaanah didn't do it, enough so that like Tisaanah would have time to run away. Cyril helps get Tisaanah to the stables, gets her horse so she can escape, and she is planning to go to Ara. Ara is a human country, but they have a higher population of Valtane and Solari. So in this world, you have regular humans, boring, old, regular humans, and then you have the Valtane and Solari, which are humans that are magic wielders, and then there's Fae. You don't really get into the Fae in book 1. You'll start meeting the Fae and whatnot in book 2. But the Valtane and Solari, they both have like different types of magic, but they're run by basically their own kind of government called the Orders. The Orders of, Daybreak and Midnight. And they're like second in command to like the main government over in Ara. So in Ara, you have the Queen Cessary, who you'll meet. She's like 13 years old. And then the second in line to the throne is Arch Commandment, which happens to be Zareth. Well, Zareth has been traveling over to Threl every couple years, and he'll visit Esmerus. And so Tisaanah has met Zareth. She doesn't know that he's the Arch Commandment, but he always brings her gifts because she's part of Valtane, and he'll tell her about Ara, and he has told her, if you can make it to Ara, then there will be a place for you. So her plan is, because now she's escaping, is she's going to go over there and find Zareth. So she gets on a boat, sails over to Ara, and makes it to whatever the capital is, and goes into the towers of Midnight and Daybreak. And her like back is super infected from being literally like having her shiitake rocked, pardon the almost language, but you get what I'm saying. Like, she literally got her whole world rocked by that beatdown. So anyways, she makes it over there. She makes it through the doors, and right before she's about to like die and pass out or whatever, she's like, I need to see Zareth. And so Zareth is actually not there, but his second in command, Nura, is there. Well, Nura is like, how do you know Zareth? What are you doing here? And, Tisaanah explains, like, I bought my freedom, and now I'm over here. And they know it's kind of shady because they've been getting news from Thorell like, this lord died somehow. We don't know his killer, but then like this escaped slave made it over, who also happened to be in this past lord's house. But anyways, so they kind of make this deal with, well, not really a deal, but Tisaanah is, because of all the people that helped her get across to get her freedom, she is working to help them. She wants to go back and free the slaves because she thinks that's what they're owed, which, you know, she's a good person. So she is like, I need the orders to help me so I can go and free the slaves in Thorell. And Nura's like, that's not how things work over here. First of all, you have to just be part of the orders. And in order to be part of the orders, you have to go through the training, which typically starts at age 12 and then goes to 18. So you're already missing out on 6 years of training, and you need to pass these tests before we're even willing to consider looking at you. So already you're supposed to start training at 12 years old. So she's a little late because she's like freaking 21. And then the training also already started 6 months prior. And so they have yearly exams. So now she has 6 months until she needs to pass this exam like a pro. And so Nura, knowing that literally everyone who teaches is already full with students that they're teaching, she takes Tisaanah to Maxentarius. Now, this man is literally perfect. Not because he's like actually perfect, like, no, he has flaws and whatnot, but he's perfect because of how real he is. Okay, Maxentarius is a Solary, which already is weird because on top of Tisaanah being late to, you know, start training, and now she's going through only 6 months instead of 6 years. Now she has, because she's Valtane, she doesn't have a Valtane instructor. Now she has a Solary instructor, which, again, is weird. Anyways, Maxentarius, Solary, he's a veteran. He fought in the last war, and now he is living in a cottage with a garden because he is just trying to get himself away from the orders. He doesn't want any part. He is trying to move on from the past because the war was horrific and all his family died and he had to kill a bunch of people. And so, in not wanting to have anything to do with the orders, he doesn't want to train Tisaanah because he's like, bro, I literally said I'm done and now you're dragging me back into this, which, I mean, it kind of makes sense. But what I love is page 88, when Tisaanah, because she's still having to stay with him even though he won't teach her, she is getting to the last straw because she doesn't know what she's doing. She's trying her hardest. She's studying all the books she can study, but she's not getting anywhere because on top of she, again, is like so far behind in training for her age, there's also the language barrier because they spoke, I think it's Therani or Therani, however you say it, in Thorell, and Ara, they speak, I don't know what they call the language, but it's a different language. So she has this language barrier and then also like a culture barrier, and it's literally depicted so well. And I'm going to read you page 88 when she has her like argument. And it's like literally, it's so good. I love this scene. Okay. So. Okay, so right now, the scene is Tisaanah is studying. She's been practicing drawing these pictures that she knows are used for like spells or whatever. But she doesn't really know what they're doing, but she just knows that like people use them, so she's trying to get better at them. And then Max comes up to her and he says, "Do you even know what those are?" My fingers tightened so hard around my pen that I nearly snapped it in two. No, and I think you probably will not say. The words came out in a low snarl. The orders probably won't ask you about them, Max said. Before I could stop myself, I jumped to my feet, whirling to him, the pen still clutched in my hand. I know. I need to. The errand words eluded me, driving my frustration to thrash up against my surface. I glared at Max, who leaned against the doorframe. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask, who has ruined you so badly that you can't do anything but stand in the way of people who have actual important things to do? Why do you feel such a pervasive, petty need to shove your petulance in the orders' faces? And why the hell do you need to bring me down with you, too? Instead, the errand words that came out sounded something like, "What so many hates do you have?" "Huh?" Max said. His confusion, understandable as it was, infuriated me. I let the pen drop violently to the ground. I hammered every errand word home slowly. Why do you hate the orders? Why do you hate me so many? What is wrong with you? "I don't hate you," Max replied, which made me even angrier. "That is not true." I shook my head. "That is not true. I don't care if you hate me. Hate me here." I touched my heart. It was the only way I could think to convey what I was saying. "Or here." I pressed my fingers against my temple. "But you hate me in what you do. Why? What wrong did I do to you?" It's not about you. Something shifted, softened in Max's expression, but I was past looking for scraps of kindness. "It is about me. This is my life, not only yours." I blinked, and all I could see was Esmerissa's body, Cyril's face, hands and skin of every man I danced for to earn the money to leave. I was a slave in Thro. Did you know? I was slave in Thro. Did you know? He didn't answer, just stared at me with one deepening line in his brow. "Did you?" "No," he said quietly. "I did many things to come here. I killed for coming here. My friend," I didn't have the vocabulary to describe what Cyril had done for me, given for me. "I left my most important people. They need me. I cannot fail them. To help them, I need this." I thrust my open palm down to the piles of drawings. "I have nothing without the orders. No power. I need this. They need this." And that's all I'm going to read from that scene. But basically, I mean, that's the turning point when he decides that he's going to help her, even though he doesn't like the orders because she's fighting for something bigger than himself. And, it's so good. It's literally so good. So eventually they start practicing, and, the 6 months flies by, and then here comes the test. Now, after this point, we're kind of going to start getting into spoilers. So, if this book sounds fabulous, which I'm sure it does, if it doesn't, then blame me, not the book. Because the book, so good. You need to go read it. But if you don't want spoilers, stop listening right now, girl. Okay, so, anyways, and just to describe Max a little more. Max, what I love is that he's just, so regular. He is not, I feel like in every book nowadays, it's like, this 6'5" man who's dark and broody and absolutely ripped and shredded with 2% body fat. And he's, so mysterious, but has, this little humor, but also if anything goes wrong in my direction, he'll kill anyone. That is not Max. Max is trying to live in peace in his little cottage. He has OCD. Everything needs to be a certain way. He's either committed 100% or he doesn't care, and he's not going to try at all. He likes to read and drink wine, and he's a maximalist. His house is filled with a bunch of decor and junk and whatnot. Okay, this character, he just feels so real. I know I've said that 5,000 times, but every single character in this book feels real. It's not they're a bad person or they're a good person. That's all we get. They have substance. They have a personality. They have flaws. They have good qualities and bad qualities, and it's so okay. And also kind of tying with page 88, I just read you that little argument. All the arguments between Max and Tisaanah are not petty, stupid arguments throughout the book. It's not oh my gosh, I just saw you with that girl in that precarious position or something. It's all like, oh no, like, I need to do this to protect my people, and be like, oh yeah, but you're working with the orders, which is like shady business or whatever. You know, like the arguments that occur are arguments that make sense that they would occur. And it's not just stupid drama. Like, I don't like drama that's just written to be like stupid. You know what I mean? I know that did not like come out well, but you get it. Anyways, and Tisaanah is a hard worker. She will obviously, as a slave and earning that 1,000 gold coins when it should have taken her years, she is freaking determined. She's stubborn, and in the book 1, we see her having to grapple with the language barrier, and also with this like naivety / like ignorance, which I think I said that word wrong. Not ignorance, naivety. I don't know. I think I said that wrong. But from not understanding Aran culture, and so things slip by her that are not okay, that Max catches, but she doesn't. And so this is where we're going to get into Tisaanah's test. So Tisaanah takes her like final to become like part of the orders. And usually it's Tisaanah versus one like instructor, okay? This was Tisaanah versus Nura, the second in command, Zareth, the first in command, and one other person. So first of all, the power imbalance is unreal. It's absolutely ridiculous. And while like she's figuring out, because she doesn't know the rules for the exam, like she doesn't know what to expect, so she thinks this is normal. Well, Zareth, being a little sketchy weenie, he like at one point literally is like, get on your knees. Ma'am, the way that like scene, he was just like so demeaning, but she is thinking that it's part of the test because, again, she doesn't know what to expect. And so it slides by, even though it's not okay, but she doesn't necessarily understand that. And she's just trying to do whatever she has to free her people. Oh, it's so, like, heartbreaking, but it's so good. And so, freaking Max and Terius, when the scene is or when the test finishes and Tisaanah passes, he absolutely loses his mind, because he's like, bro, that was not okay. Like, everything in that situation was so wrong and so messed up. Like, they totally just freaking humiliated you, but like Tisaanah doesn't realize that, and she's like, no, like, Max, be quiet, because this is what I have to do to get to whatever point. And so after she passes her test, she has a meeting with Zareth and Nura, and they're like, okay, we will send our soldiers with you to go fight for the slaves if you will use this weapon and fight in this war that we're having to deal with. And Tisaanah she doesn't really know what the weapon is, and so she agrees, because again, she's willing to literally do anything to go back there, because she wants to save the people that helped get her to freedom. Little does she know, the weapon Riche is not just a little gun or something. Riche is a magical entity, okay? It's not really understood what exactly he is, but he is like a deeper level. There's like different layers of magic. He is a deep layer of magic that also has like a personality or whatever. Riche was also previously used in the last war in Max and Terius, and he is obsessed with Max and Terius. Like, this Riche is a horrible like person, entity thing. He is absolutely like evil and just obsessed with Max. So Max, you would be like, oh, well, why didn't Max warn her and tell her? Max had to take a blood pact after he had the weapon, so he couldn't tell anyone about it. And then everyone, because he had this horrible weapon during the war, people thought he was like, they think he's a horrible person, like he's a monster, but really he had this thing inside of him that he couldn't really control, and he can't tell anyone that it happened, so everyone continues to think that he's kind of a horrible, bloodthirsty person. Anyways, Tisaanah agrees, and she takes Riche, and Riche will, like, take over her body, and literally, like, he's a murdering machine. It's insane. It's honestly one of, like, the coolest enemy, like, ideas that I've ever read. Like, it's so different, like, implanting a weapon that also is, like, a living thing and will fight you for control. And it's honestly pretty cool. Before we're gonna kind of turn the table a little bit and get into the romance aspect of this book before returning back to Riche. First of all, well, not first of all, just adding to another reason why I freaking love this book. It's not even until, like, page 200-ish that Tisaanah even makes a remark that Max isn't ugly. She's not necessarily like, oh, he's like, oh my gosh, like, he's actually so drop dead gorgeous. Like, she's just like, wow, he's actually better looking than what I've noticed before. And then it's not till, like, page 250-ish that we start, like, some minor flirting. Okay? Not like a Fate Inked in Blood where page 8, this girl was head over heels for the main male character who she had just met. Okay? No. This book, they actually were friends. Like, true friends before they fell for each other, and I'm a huge fan. Like, a nice slow burn, like a reasonable burn into a romantic relationship. Yes, girl, I'm all about it. I am. Anyways, so Tisaanah needs to do a little test run with Riche, and so the orders send her back to Threll to free slaves to see how well the weapon works inside her. It's a success, as in she kills lots of people. She kills like 50 people on her own with her sword, Il Sahaj, which means, I think it's sword. It has two meanings. It can be sword of all worlds or sword of no worlds, which is pretty cool. And her power with Riche is that she makes things like decay permanently, which, well, that's kind of dumb to say. Like, when something decays, you can't really bring it back. But yeah, she makes things decay, which is a magic that has really never been seen before. And so she absolutely demolishes the slave lords. Well, then Zareth leaves to go back to Ara for business or whatever. Well, he leaves, but they have invitations to the Mikov estate, which is Esmeris's estate that his son has taken over since he died. And so they're having a party there. Well, little do they know that when Zareth last went to the estate, he did not leave on good terms. And so the Mikovs were not happy with the order. So Tisaanah and the gang show up to infiltrate the party because she's about to take over the estate and free all the about 1,000 slaves that are working there. Well, it goes wrong. And I'm not really going to go into the details because, again, you can read it as you should. But Riche and Tisaanah are battling for control in her body. And as Riche is like mostly in control, Tisaanah is fighting it to take back over. And then Riche, because he's obsessed with Max and thinks that Tisaanah and Max are becoming a thing, he feels betrayed by Tisaanah because he was betrayed by Max. And so he's furious with both of them. So now he's trying to take over the body and he wants to kill Max. So now Max is also fighting with Riche, who is in Tisaanah's body. And they have this like epic battle. And in this battle, we get this glimpse of some special little ability that Riche left behind in Max. He left it behind to kind of like forever haunt him, to be like, you'll always have a piece of me with you, because he knew that Max hated him. And Max had a sister who was obsessed with reptiles, and so he left Max with this like third eyelid or whatever, and whenever I don't know if it's either he closes this eyelid or he opens it, but he takes on this form of like this huge like serpent magic thing. I don't know. It's hard to picture, but when you're reading it, it sounds marvelous. And so there's this like magic snake battling Tisaanah. And Tisaanah gets to like the core of Riche, and I'm not sure if there's either two possibilities of what I think Riche is, or like what the core that she encountered was. I think it was either like his creator or like Riche before he came, like what he is now, which I think are probably a mixture of both. I'm gonna guess that Riche, like whoever created Riche, is like Riche evolved, if that makes sense. Like he got too caught up in whatever magic and became like this evil, sad entity or whatever. And so Tisaanah gets a glimpse of like the core of Riche and then ends up taking back over. And then the battle is over with Riche getting knocked out for a moment in time, receding, and Tisaanah taking back over her body. And then they leave. They get all the slaves that want to leave Threll, and they're on ships back to Ara because now she has to go fight the war so that she can get more troops to go back into Threll at a later time to free the rest of the slaves. Well, the book ends with we see a note or a letter that Zareth is writing that he's going to send to Nura while they're sailing back. And it ends saying, let me flip my notes. By the time you get this, Cesri will be dead. So, he's performing a little cue. And that's how the book ends. Sorry if I wasn't super clear in describing it. But, like I said, this book is fabulous. You need to just go out and read it. I can guarantee, girl, that you will not regret it. It is so freaking fabulous. And I loved the language barrier and the like cultural like ignorance, I guess, that we get from Tisaanah, which is mostly in the first half of the book, because this book kind of takes place over about like a year-ish. And so by the end of the year, she's like obviously more fluent. But it reminded me a lot of my time in Brazil, as I love to talk about. I feel like I bring it up all the time. But yeah, it reminded me of my time in Brazil and using my like broken Portuguese to speak to people. And I loved it. This book gave me like a homely feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. So, anyways, shout out to my Brazilian friends, especially, fun fact. Well, this actually is not a fun fact. This is more like a devastating fact. If you're religious, you should pray for Porto Alegre because a dam broke in one of the big rivers, and now the entire city, and it's a big city. For people that aren't familiar with Brazil, Porto Alegre is a big city, and it has been entirely flooded, and it's a huge disaster. There's been like 1 million people displaced, and homes have been completely flooded, and it's really bad. So, my Brazilian friends, I am thinking of you, and I am praying for you. Anyways, with that little sad note, that's the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and next week, I'm not sure what it's going to be on, but it's a not book club week, so it'll be something wacky and random. Okay, I love you. Goodbye.